Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome co-founder of the private foundation, the Momentum Project, and one of the original creators of the first of its kind lesbian super PAC, LPAC. Please welcome OutGiver Sarah Schmidt.
I remember walking up our country road with my dad and my brother. My little sister was sitting in the wagon that he was pulling. She sat beside a plate full of food, exactly what we had for dinner that night, but more, and a bottle of Christian Brothers brandy. We would walk about a quarter mile up that road every couple Sundays, nearly every month, to a small shack, as my dad called it. That's where Billy Wiedenhaupt lived. My dad would knock on the door and bring in the plate and the bottle. My siblings and I stood outside the door very quietly, peering in. He told me that Billy was a drunk, that he had a hard life. He said that if he had to live the life Billy lived, he'd probably be a drunk living in a shack too. Their conversation was always brief, and he always slipped him a perfectly folded $50 bill as he shook his hand to leave. Billy died the summer I was 10. I remember my father tying his tie as he dressed for Billy's funeral. If my dad were here today, he'd wonder why the hell we all need to spend all this money and time talking about philanthropy. He'd say something like, if you see a need and you can fill it, then go, just get busy. He'd tell you that he gives because he has more than he needs and he's just doing what he thinks is right, what his parents taught him to do. Growing up in the wake of the Depression, he has very vivid memories of bums joining the family for dinner almost every night. Their parish priest knew that the Schmidts were always a good spot for a hungry person to get a meal. What's the difference if you cook for one more when you're already cooking for 11? My dad reminds me regularly that the Schmidts are a lot luckier than we are good. Helps to keep a person humble, their feet on the ground. He feels very sad for people his age who haven't discovered the joy of giving. And while his parenting style was not strategic or thoughtful, he knew that involving his children in giving from a very early age was the only way that we would learn how. You can't expect your kids to be generous if you don't teach them how. So while I will never convince him of the value of spending $2,500 a day or $2,500 to sit through a 3-day conference about strategic philanthropy, and he will never accept the descriptor philanthropist, I learned the basics of how to give and how to do it right from him. During my middle school years, my parents held family meetings to talk about their giving. They would ask us if we had suggestions. They wanted us to defend our requests and do follow-up. During my high school years, I secured a summer internship at a residential school for severely disabled kids. After 2 summers, my dad set up a small permanent endowment for the school. I learned that this kind of work had value, that this effort mattered. I saw the deep impact you could have when you understood an organization and combined that understanding with sustained financial support. By the time I got to college, I was a pretty seasoned philanthropist. I had been sitting in on foundation board meetings. I was meeting regularly with the directors of NGOs in Africa and Latin America. I understood the tax advantages of charitable giving and the mechanisms and structures that could accomplish your giving goals. I had developed a preference for program support, and I liked challenge grants. My family's giving was quite sophisticated, whether they knew it or not. I've devoted most of my career to the nonprofit sector, to building unusual collaborations, to have collective impact, to advocacy work for people who can't advocate for themselves or just don't know how. I've spent years in the development world challenging people with resources to join collaborative efforts to improve their chances of success, increase their chances of having more sustained impact. I learned how to fundraise from my dad, too. While most people think of him as an entrepreneur in the business world, his proudest achievement, his legacy, will be a regional effort that fights poverty in Northeast Wisconsin that is funded by a golf outing he started 28 years ago and now raises $2 million annually. Julie and I now give together from our own family foundation. We fund projects and programs that operate in the communities from which we adopted our children. We support sickle cell research and clinical care because when our son was just 2 months old, we learned that he had the disease. We gave our oldest daughter a donor advised fund for her 16th birthday, and we add to it every Christmas. Whatever she does in the world, wherever she does it, we want her to be able to give to the things that she feels passionate about. We spend more time at Christmas shopping for a family in need than for our own. And we know that we're on the right track because this year our 7-year-old son was very concerned about if Santa knew he should bring food, not toys, to hungry kids. When we give, we do so openly and as a couple, as a family. We know this can have an added benefit for other gay and lesbian families. We link our political work to our philanthropy. We weren't shy about inviting Illinois Governor Quinn to join our whole family at the sickle cell blood drive at one of the largest Black churches on Chicago's South Side to meet the pastor there, who happens to be one of our son's hematologists. Together, we all learned about the importance of the blood drive coordinator role, a position we funded through a grant that we gave to Lurie Children's Hospital, where our son receives his clinical care. We formed a unique partnership with the Jesuit priests who work with the Oglala Sioux in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. Our youngest daughter is a quarter Oglala Sioux. Turns out the tribe is located about 90 miles from one of our family company's South Dakota warehouses. So all of the Pine Ridge school buses, vans, and service vehicles are running on U.S. Auto Force tires delivered from our warehouse, and they're burning motor oil delivered in 50-gallon drums that we blended in our plant. Father George reaches out to me regularly, and he was very excited to hear about LPAC the last time we shared a beer. The personal is political. We get the power our giving has when we give openly, strategically, transparently, thoughtfully, boldly. I'm quite certain that us showing up, as we do with our 3 kids in tow, has much more impact than the money that we're actually able to give. We always struggle to balance a need, meeting a need, with being strategic in our giving, and we wish we had more to give. But what we do and how we do certainly reflects our family's core values. In the last year, I've really pushed the envelope on merging my passions for equality, women's rights, feminism, progressive ideals. LPAC was born out of Urvashi Vaad's vision for a universe of politically engaged lesbians, bi, and trans women. And while my contributions to LPAC are technically C4, there's something very C3 about what we're doing and how we're challenging women to engage in this critical work. Transparency, ethics, solid governance, guts with an edge. Challenging people to think about the traditional roles of women in politics, challenging people to link women's rights and gay rights. It's an honor to partner with her and the board in this work. So what inspires me? Why do I give? Why do we give? Why do we do this? Those beautiful little faces, if you haven't already figured it out, that's why. Julie and I live such a privileged, mainstream life. You know, in the suburbs, we're boring. Our Honda Odyssey is loaded with Little League gear. The Rockstar minivan, as our kids call it. But our children are Black, Native American, Latina. Their future remains quite uncertain. What challenges will they face? What obstacles are in their path that we don't even know about yet? We will do all we can to shape the future that they will inherit, and we will do it because we made a promise to their birth parents. We are inspired to dig deep because to live their lives with dignity, they will have to dig deep. My dad would definitely agree. You can't expect your kids to dig deep if you don't show them how. It's really a gift to be here this weekend, to be able to think these kinds of thoughts and engage in this kind of work. It's an honor here to be here with you, and thank you. Carpe diem.